Hello, girlfriends. How are we doing this week, huh? Yeah, last week we talked about an iconic film, The Wizard of Oz, one that we all know. I feel like this week I'm talking about something that maybe a lot of people don't know about, but they should, because it has been impactful on me as a witchy woman and as an angsty young adult, especially nowadays. That's right, we're talking about the 1996 cult classic, The Craft. If you haven't heard of this, I highly recommend watching it. I'm gonna spill the tea about it, so spoiler alert if you're not into that. But without further ado, let's dive into this vampy, campy, classic film. It's one of my favorites. Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode. As I said, we're talking about The Craft. This is one of the landmark, witchy films. This changed the idea of what a witch is in movies in general. It went from this very idea of the Wicked Witch of the West. What I love is the very old hag on a broom, kooky spooky kind of a thing, to a more realistic, you get a reason as to why maybe people practice certain things. That being said, before we dive into this episode, I just want to say I am not a professional witch. I don't regularly practice. I appreciate so many bits and pieces of it, but I am not someone who is a spiritual professional in this topic. I just adore it so much, and I think I adore the appropriation of it, which is maybe a conversation for a different day. But I just want to put that out there. I'm not here to be a professional, okay? I am a fan of witches. And I look pretty damn good. If you all have seen the movie, which you should, this is my take on Nancy. And my little Funko Pop! Isn't she cute? They just released the Craft ones, the 4 of them. And I've always just loved little tiny Nancy. And so, here we are. Oh! It's a good thing they're just plastic. Let's get this shit rolling, shall we? I'm so excited. Ah! It's time for a little bit of something. This 1996 film was directed by Andrew Fleming, and as I said, is iconic. It stars some pretty fierce girls, especially for the 90s. We've got Scream Queen Neve Campbell, Fairuza Balk, we'll get to her. We've got Rachel True, and Robin Tunney. Well, I was born in 1996, so I wasn't there for it, but I feel like it's a good vignette of time in the more grungy, misunderstood youth era of things. I mean, this doesn't look like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, something like that. This looks a little more like street real, even though it was a private Catholic school. But anyways, so basically what happens is a family has just moved to Los Angeles. This is the family of the girl in the wig, Sarah. It's, a shift, not easy to go in high school, whatever. And her first welcome, I guess, to the city is with a very creepy, very foreshadowing stranger man who brings a snake onto her front step or whatever. And it's very spooky, and it definitely sets the tone for what the film is gonna be, right? So she gets to school, she meets this hottie, but the guy from Riverdale, details, meets him, and he's basically like, hey, I want to get with you, but don't talk to those girls that are looking at you, because in a twisted turn of events, they're witches. These girls are Bonnie, Nancy, and Rochelle, and they each kind of have their individual little little problem that we'll get to throughout the film. But greasy-haired Bonnie notices that Sarah has some wicked abilities with a number 2 pencil, and I'm not talking about her French homework. So she goes to her coven sisters and says, hey, this girl's our 4th, we're gonna complete this thing, we're gonna be all 4 elements, and we're gonna start a coven, because they are kind of wannabe practicing. I feel like it's what we all are now, we all love crystals, we all love the tarot, but we know nothing about them. Maybe not, but they genuinely wanted to become a coven, and they wanted to become practicing witches with powers over their peers and themselves and their lives, essentially, which nowadays, why wouldn't you want a little more power over your life? I can understand. I understand why Nancy went batshit crazy, because she had a lot to change. So these girls kind of slowly meander into Sarah's life. They end up hanging out. They bring her to an occult shop where she is kind of introduced to this whole world of the craft. At first she's a little this is real, this is actually a thing, and she's a little skeptical about the whole thing. And after a twisted turn of events and some rumors being spread about her, I mean, high school was not fun. For me, middle school was worse, but I feel like this movie really makes me sympathize with the average girl in high school. The girls have a little more at stake, and there's, you know, there's more to uphold and whatnot, and I feel like this movie really captivates a lot of that. But, of course, some other crazy stuff happens, and the girls are like, wow, we can really do this. So, they end up biting the bullet, they do the ceremony, and they declare to the god Mano, who is fictional, we'll get to that, and they declare what they want. And as the movie progresses, you see little vignettes of each girl's woe that kind of gets corrected and fixed for them, which I think is, I mean, storytelling, love it, because you see their problems and then you see like their fix in the middle of the film, and you're like, where could this film go? And it goes downhill. So Sarah's boy problems are fixed, but it has some side effects that get a little non-consensual, we'll say, a little stalkerish, and essentially she puts her boy toy under a love spell, which becomes dangerous. One thing that I think is incredibly ahead of its time for this film is their talk on racism. I mean, this is a 1996 film, and you flat out see a white high school student use a variation of the N-word against one of the witches, and it is, I mean, heart-wrenching. I remember watching it when I was little, and it doesn't hit quite as much as it does in today's society, especially when we're in a civil revolution, you know? And I just think, like, in my notes I wrote, like, we've literally not learned. Clearly people haven't watched The Craft because people are still racist, and that sucks. But this film, I feel like it's just so crazy how in 1996 the problem was the same as it is today. We've made not much progress, which I think is absolutely bonkers. But you see Rochelle's woes with her bully be cured when the bully gets some side effects of some comments that she had made in the beginning of the movie. Now, our girl Nancy, who is a little off the rockers, right? She wants to be like the leader of the coven. She knows the most. She's probably done the most practice. I mean, her home life is terrible. She has an abusive stepfather. Her mom is a drunk, and she's really struggling because she sees these girls' wishes come to fruition. Now, the girls kind of asked for singular things that they wanted from the god Mano, whereas Nancy wanted all the power of Mano, which to me is like, girl, slow your roll, you know? Don't ask for 100, ask for 20, you know? Like, keep it simple. But she didn't do that, so she was a little mad when things weren't happening, and then, you know, it's like a light switch. Some strange things happen, she feels her power, and the rest of the film, we get paved the way for what happens. Now, I don't want to spoil the whole thing. Basically, Sarah realizes that the girls are absolutely crazy. So that's kind of like what I see happening, right? Is this power it's so delicious, it's so good, but you get high on your own supply and things get out of hand. And they do in this film, and Nancy essentially becomes the devil, like, is the worst thing, and really psychs Sarah out. And so, you know, the rest of the film happens. We won't get too much into detail with that. This is the section of the episode I like to call Eyes on the Actors, where we pretty much zoom in on an individual witchy woman that I love in this film. Clearly, we're talking about Fairuza Balk, who plays Nancy in the film. I did not realize that she was Dorothy in Return to Oz, that creepy film. You know what I'm talking about, right? She was little Dorothy in that. Like, that was like her big break. She really is someone who, in my opinion, I look at like her IMDb credits, and she's really someone that I think like takes the work that fulfills her and what she wants to do, and she's kind of got a niche to her. I mean, her look, it's iconic. She's very like dark and vampy. And fun fact, one of the reasons why she was kind of like bumped up to the top of the casting for The Craft is because she was a practicing pagan, I think is what I had read in a couple different things. But she practiced some form of witchcraft, whatever it was. I was watching some interviews doing my homework, and she had a very serious, very concerned time with the film. And Fairuza Balk, who had a background in this, who practiced, who had a spiritual one-on-one connection, she was pretty insistent on wanting to do it right and not wanting it to be the cackle cackle witch on a broom, which is pretty respectable, I think. And she went on for the rest of her career to do some serious work. To me, she'll always be this landmark iconic role, but how fun, right? Like, a real witch was cast as this character. And I feel like that's part of the draw of Nancy, is that she is, like, you know, from the shot one of her, like, looking up or whatever, you know that she is just like, she's a dark horse. Let's talk about this film's iconic impact, and I'll try not to put my own bias on it. Now, they did hire a real witch on set to kind of help facilitate, making sure that things weren't being, like, appropriated terribly, and there are moments in the film where they are doing, like, real incantations, and they are doing real things, but it's just slightly off, as if, like, a high schooler was trying to cast a spell, and they were messing up what teenage girls would mess up. This film played a lot with some SFX. You've got some beached sea sharks made of plaster in one scene. You have snakes coming out of Nancy's fingertips in one scene. You've got the infamous hair changing when they're showing the glamour, and she's going from her dark hair to blonde. And fun fact, instead of, like, CGIing that, it's 1996, right? Times were tough. She wore a green wig. Also, we gotta talk about it, Robin Tunney's wig in this film. Now, she was just in Empire Records, and there's the infamous scene where she's shaving her head, right? And so, she had no hair. She had very short hair, so they had to glue a wig on her head every single day for set. And I will say, it is a pretty okay wig for 1996. You know, watching it back on a 4K screen, but I've seen worse on some of the Netflix specials that are out in 2019, so there's that. When I showed some of my friends this film, I was so excited, I was trying to, like, show them, like, I watched this when I was little, and they kind of turned to me and they're like, are parts of this supposed to be funny, or am I just, like, not absorbing it right? And it is. I mean, it ages well, but, like, there are elements that just capture that, like, 1990s film, what they could do at the time. And they really did their best. I mean, you gotta say, like, I don't know how else they would have done it. Now, they actually filmed this movie to be PG-13. So you've got one F-bomb, minimal blood, and, like, barely no nudity. None at all. Basically, the rating, whatever they're called, parental blah blah blah, they got back to them and they said, if you were doing a film about teenagers using witchcraft, it has to be rated R. And so there was no way of fighting it. I mean, it did well in the box office, surprisingly. It was said that it came out of nowhere. Whatever that means. But some of the critics, kind of panned it for being too nice of a rated R film. I mean, nowadays I really do think that this is a PG-13 movie. I think it's funny that it's rated R, and I think it just shows where society was in the idea of witches. I think this kind of opened the eyes of Hollywood about, like, what modern-day witches can be. I mean, this is before Harry Potter, this inspired Charmed. This had a ripple effect in Hollywood in regards to witches, and I think that's very cool. Very fun. Love it. Now, it's obviously no secret that this movie has inspired, like, a new generation of, like, a witchy aesthetic and a vibe and whatnot. And actually, my girl Katy Perry has gone on record and said that the craft inspired her 2013 hit song, Dark Horse. Okay, so I've bloobity-blawed about some history and production of the movie. Let's talk about Luna's music. This is the part of this episode where I really just spew out why I love this film. I remember seeing Nancy for the first time and thinking, like, just so intriguing, right? In drag, I like to be this dark, edgy, kind of, like, whimsical, Tim Burton-esque, and I feel like Fairuza Balk, as Nancy, captures that so beautifully. It's the darkness, it's the soft-looking skin, the grunginess of the 1990s, but then there's some scenes where she cleans up pretty well. I definitely accredit Nancy in this film as a drag inspiration for me. I think it's so fun. Now, granted, this hair probably doesn't look, this hair's a little like Nancy at the end of the film, but that doesn't matter, Okay, let's talk about the light as a feather, stiff as a board scene. So, basically what's happening is that the girls are at a sleepover, as girls do, and they play the game, light as a feather, stiff as a board. If you don't know what it's about, you sit around in a circle, someone lays on the floor, and you put 2 fingers under said person, and you chant, light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. And as it's happening, it feels like you are lifting the person, and the person then psychologically thinks that they are levitating off of the ground. And that happens in this film, and one of the best script writing moments is when the mom walks in and kind of like almost catches the girls levitating. You know, she's in midair and she drops to the ground. And the mom opens the door and says,
"Are you girls getting high?"
Obviously it's a marijuana joke, but high, as in like, high, levitating. Ah! Do you get it? Iconic. Iconique! This film has some really, really good quotes, and I think a lot of them stem from real Wiccan practices. You know, obviously you've got as above, so below. Fun fact for you, the on-site witch actually helps them create the god Mano. Their fear was if they put a real deity in the film, having these witches chant to this deity, that they would get a ripple effect of teenagers who saw the film, felt really, really great about it, dressed up, and wanted to do the full thing, and, you know, accidentally chanting to certain deities that uneducated people don't really need to be chanting to, you know? You don't want to open any portals that you can't close. And so they created Mano, who is very naturistic. It's not black or white, it's all the gray space in between. They just slapped a different name on it, which I think is pretty responsible of them, and I had no idea until I Wikipedia'd recently. Now here are some of my favorite quotes from the film. In regards to the magic, Sarah says,
"Nothing makes everything all better again."
We cannot miss when the bus driver says, "You girls look out for those weirdos." And my girl Nancy says,
"We are the weirdos, mister."
And to close out, one of my favorite quotes from the film is from the shop owner talking to Sarah. And she says, quote,
"True magic is neither black nor white. It's both, because nature is both. Loving and cruel, all at the same time."
Alrighty, well, I don't know if you've learned anything. I hope you've enjoyed me just geeking out about the craft. But thank you so much for watching. That has been a wrap on the craft. See you next week. Wow, another one in the basket case. If you have seen the film to the end, you know what I'm talking about. How about them apples for another episode, huh? Crazy. What a great time. Anyways, thank you so much for watching my crafty little web series I'm doing here. If you like the craft as much as I do, please put it in the comments below. Let me know. Make sure to subscribe to me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, all the social medias, like my page on Facebook. And yeah, stay tuned for more episodes of Witchy Film Study with me, Luna Muse. Goodbye. Before I go, please, let's remember, whatever energy, positive or negative, that you put out could come back ×3. So think about that next time you want to do something dumb. I digress. Anyways, that's all I got for you. Keep it spooky. Bye!